Well, it's week 4 of the LCS with coverage brought to you by Alienware. I'm joined right now by Bwipo after what seemed like a pretty clean win against Dignitas. How do you feel about it?
Oh, it wasn't as clean as I'd like it to be. Obviously, a little bit sloppy, I think, in terms of decision making. But Dignitas is a tough opponent. Like they don't go down easy. Let's put it that way. So even if you get a big advantage, they will try to group mid and try and get something going at least. Fight back a little bit. So obviously, when we were playing such a committed 1-3-1 comp, it was a little bit complicated to find angles in the 5v5. But ultimately, we did, and we're able to close out the game in a relatively clean fashion. I think that's a good way to put it. Relatively clean.
Well, whenever I spoke to you in our interview a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was during lock-in, you had mentioned that you were kind of like in the process of, I think you said like re-envisioning your play style or your approach to the game. How has that unfolded so far, and do you feel like you've finished re-envisioning it? Like, where are we at on the re-envision process?
So it's actually a very interesting. It's a very interesting thing that I mentioned that because that's how I felt like when I came to NA first. But I noticed that this is a byproduct of playing with Ayla, where he's not as proactive as Core, obviously, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, I mean, he might be. It's just when he comes into our lineup rather than the academy lineup, like he's obviously, surrounded by star-studded players. We're all veterans over here. So I think that he becomes much more timid, and when support is much more timid in the game, then progressing the game is much harder through vision. Like playing with a player like Core basically is like a little bit of a cheat code because they have so much experience in when they're allowed to walk in for vision and when they're allowed to cheat vision. Like they walk in, they put wards down that they're not supposed to, they get vision that they're not supposed to because of experience, of course, recognizing when you're allowed to, when you're not allowed to. And because of that, I think that that lack of experience, I actually came to realize that when we play with Core, my old style of like going mid a lot and looking a lot for skirmishes and fights is actually very good. And when we play with Ayla, it's better for me to slow down, farm a lot, and get really big because he will perform in team fights. It's just those small moments in the game where you might get a small advantage that Core might see that Ayla might not. Like it is a gamble in the end, but through years of experience, these small little details that get you the small little edges in the mid and late game really give you a lot of information that you can play with and make more coordinated plays as a team. And when you don't have that information, you often play much more timid. You're much more scared. You don't want to walk into 5 people all of a sudden, right? Like that's what I kind of realized. So when I did say that I was changing my style, but now I'm like, well, damn, well, yeah, well, gosh, when I play with Core, it's like it's not bad if I go mid, and I'm not going mid enough now, and I'm like, oh, damn. So we'll have to see. Obviously, we are playing with both. Like they have been like I think 50-50 at this point in the LCS. So obviously I have to just make sure I adapt to whoever is on stage and I try to be the best player for that player on stage and I provide whatever they need. I think this is kind of been my brand as a player in the team environment. Just make sure I fit the bill.
So what I'm hearing from you is when you play with Core, you have a more coordinated team.
Yes. I like that you made that pun because Ela's name is Bill, so I said fit the bill.
Oh man, that's so good.
A Core pun, and now it's complete. Now it's complete.
We've done it. Okay. All right. Yesterday, you guys played against Golden Guardians. Did not have a chance to interview anybody from Team Liquid after that. But why is Golden Guardians the best team in the LCS right now? Clearly, they are, right? Because they lost. Everybody thought you guys were. They beat you.
Oh, true.
They must be the best, right? That's how that works.
Yeah, I think Blazor was a bit too good. He whiffed the Ice Q and it hit the TF that got tagged by E, and it was a disaster. I don't know, like if he was that good that he was aiming for TF there, I honor him. Like honestly, that's insane. I'd have to ask him if he was actually aiming for TF there, or or whatever. But like, yeah, that play, it was like a very fine line between he completely griefed it or he completely 1v9'd it. So he was a bit too good. But in general, that game, I think, it was a good display of like how we need to recognize the difference between playing with Core and playing with Ayla. Like it is important. Like we can't just treat them as the same player and play the same drafts and like, yeah, we're gonna pick Lux Caitlyn and stomp this bot lane, right? Yeah. Like sure, if Core is playing, that might be a good strategy, but with Ayla playing on stage, like it's important that we recognize like he doesn't have the same experience, and that's fine. Like I'm not trying to put him down for that. Like this is not a negative thing. It's just it's just reality, Like some players are really, really strong. Core JJ is MVP of like one of the best players in the NLCS, right? Like you can't just replace him and assume that the player you're replacing him with is going to be at the same level. And recognizing that in our team and compensating for that by talking to Ayla more often and making sure he's comfortable, finding drafts that are comfortable for him rather than Core. Because I was a substitute player back in 2018, and one of the reasons why I was successful on stage is because my team did this really well. Like, I spent a lot of time with my coaching staff to tell them, like, look, I can't play this as well as Soaz. I have this answer. I want to integrate this into the draft. How do we do that? And replicating that here is very important. And I think yesterday we were a little bit complacent and didn't do that enough. So we put him in a position where he's obviously not going to be as comfortable as Core would be in the same spot. And recognizing that is really important, and working on that is going to be the key into making sure that we can continue to have a great performance regardless of whether or not Core is there.
So for the Golden Guardians game specifically, you just feel like it came down to the play style that you guys tried to push with these 5 guys.
I mean, we would play Lux Caitlyn bot lane, and like we were exchanging trades we were exchanging kills 2v2, and that's never a good thing for Lux Caitlyn. Right? Yeah. They want a really controlled game, all summoners up. They can pressure plates with jungle and mid pressure, and then we play the game that way. And obviously, again, it can happen. You can have bad game. You can, I don't. It's hard to give criticism towards my teammates and not feel like people will think I'm flaming them. I'm not. Absolutely not. It's the same top lane, right? If I play Jace Nar, and I'm playing the J side, and I mess up, I would be a liability for my team, right? That's just the nature of the champion pick. You cannot mess up even a little bit. You give an edge, Nar will take a mile. Same in bot lane. Like, you give an edge to the Thresh in the bot lane there, he will take a mile if you don't watch out. And because that's the nature of what Core would be comfortable playing, we just this is what we practice, this is what we want to do, this is what Hans is used to, we're going to do it. We tried, didn't work out. We adapt for today, a little bit of a different approach, and I think it's good. It's a lesson well learned.
My last question for you is I've been talking to a lot of the EU players who have come over here. And in the past, obviously, there's just like, oh, God, we have to play NA solo queue. EUS is so much better, blah, blah, blah. Yes, EUS is toxic, but at least we've got better ping and whatever. Champions queue now is a thing. Yep. Does that just make all the concerns around that stuff go away? Are there things that are still outstanding? Or, do you miss the EU solo queue system at all? Like, what's your kind of take on it?
I like Champions Queue. The idea is fantastic. I'm a bit of an elitist when it comes to League of Legends. So, like, for example, I think Challenger should be minimum cutoff. Grandmaster is, it was First Master, now it's Grandmaster. Still too low. I think Challenger should be the cutoff minimum. For all players, so, like, for example, LCS players are exempt. I don't believe in this. If you want to earn the right to play Champions Queue, you should be Challenger, no matter what your rank is as a professional player. I also think that autofill would be nice. Obviously, there's a work in progress, but I miss, innovative picks, people trying things out. The meta is a little bit stale in the Champions queue, which is a given. People are trying their hardest. I understand. It's just, me. I like to pick a champ or two that people don't usually see, and being able to do this in a more like relaxed environment would be nice. That's why I've always liked solo queue, because I don't feel bad if I grief some people. Yeah. In Champions queue, if I grief, I'm like, I feel awful. Yes. So, and I tend to grief because, again, like, I have a very specific idea of, like, this matchup should work, and then it doesn't work, and then, well, shit. Yeah. So I think there's a very fine line between, like, toxicity that can brew in Champions queue. Like, if you consistently have bad performances in Champions queue, you will, like, kind of get alienated. And I worry that some players might get alienated by their own teammates even. And that is something to respect.
Happening to you? Is Core refusing to queue up with you or something?
Yeah, I can't win. No, not to me, but I can tell that. I can definitely tell that. Out of experience, I wouldn't be surprised if it will happen in the future, and it is something that I'm very worried about, because, like, when I have bad performance, like, there's always times where people talk about their teammates, and it's like, oh. Like, for example, back in 2018 MSI, Broxo was like stuck in D2. Like, it happens. You can have a bad time at solo queue. Things just don't work out your way. And I never, like, I'm mentioning that because it's not like I blame him for it. Like, in that tournament, it didn't matter to me, because, like, Broxo was my teammate. He was there for me. We always tried our best on stage. We played together. He played well in scrims. He played well on stage. So I didn't give a shit. But, if your team is losing, and your teammate is not performing well in Champions queue, and you play with him or against him, or people that like, everyone talks about performance in Champions queue, whether you talk about it or not, right? Like, for example, I play like a night of Champions queue, we played 5 games, and yesterday I had this guy in my game and he ran it down, like, you talk about these things. Yeah. And I worry that if you end up having like a bad week or bad weeks, there might be, some toxicity aimed towards the player that is having a bad time, and I think that it needs to be monitored. Like, I don't think it's healthy that, people circulate all this type of, bad vibes, at least not in their own team. Like, like I don't give a shit if people think that I'm terrible and they flame me because I ran it on 10 games. But if my own teammates start like getting affected by that and view me in a different light, it would really bother me. And I think in general it's something to be concerned about. That said, if you play well, there's no issues. So I'm hoping I'm playing well enough that my teammates are not hearing that I'm running it down.
Very good. Well, okay, Bwipo, is there anything you want to say to any of the fans out there?
Yeah, just thank you for all the support. I'm very happy. I'm doing my best to integrate into NA, and I hope you guys can continue to support Team Liquid. Check out Liquid Plus for some extra content. Have a good time.
Very good. Thank you so much, Bwipo, for the interview. Congratulations on the big win today. Looking forward to seeing more from you guys as things go. Actually, one last question. You pointed this out to me before the start of the interview. You've almost played against every player in the LCS so far. Tomorrow will be the last one on stage. Anybody stand out? We can just keep it short and sweet because I know we're already running out of time. But
definitely Summit.
Summit. Okay.
He stands out. Yeah. Everyone loves Gnar in this region, and he's by miles the best Gnar player. So he stands out as like the best Gnar player. It's a Gnar region. Everyone loves Gnar here. Like, oh, LPL play Gnar. Oh, I can play Gnar. Like everyone starts playing Gnar. And it's like, okay, well, he's the best Gnar player by miles.
Well, you can't spell Gnar without NA. Anyway, thank you so much, Bwipo, for the interview. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things LCS right here on my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching that interview. I am back at the studio, which is so good. I hope you guys are enjoying these. I feel like the interviews are better, and I couldn't be here if it wasn't for sponsors like Alienware, who help make sure that I can have a wonderful person to be behind the cameras. We're doing 4K video again, which is something we started back in 2019. We're happy to be able to bring back using Alienware hardware. So if you are appreciating this new content, which is also old content because it's just old content that's made new again. Anyway, if you appreciate it, check out the link in the description for me, alienware.com/Travis. Use the code, get something cool.